Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. We are in our series, Women in the Bible. Now, this next woman I'm going to talk about, there is another woman connected to her story. However, I'm going to make separate videos about them because I want to do each woman justice by talking about them individually. So, if you didn't know, we're still in Genesis. So the next woman would, of course, be Sarai, who is Abram's wife. So her story starts in Genesis chapter 16. And Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no child, and she had a Mitzrite female servant whose name was Hagar. So Mitzrite is it means Egyptian, right? So Mitzrayim is Egypt. All right. So that's just so we're clear. And Sarai said to Abram, "See, Yahuwah has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Now, just a little backstory, a little context, that Yahuwah had already told Abram that he was going to bless him through many children, through his seed, right, in the previous chapters. So it says in chapter 15, verse 18, on the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given this land to your seed, from the river of Mitzrayim, Egypt, to the great river, the river Euphrates, and the Canaanite, and the Kenizzite, and the Cadmonite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite. So he's saying, I've given all this land, the promised land, to your seed, right? And Sarai was like, well, I don't have any children. And obviously, was not going to give me any children that I'm going to birth from my body. So here, take my servant, basically a surrogate, right? Have a surrogate woman. That's what happened a lot of times when the women were barren. They would take their maidservants and have their maidservants sleep with their husband, and the child that the maidservant birthed would be their child. So Sarai was like, well, I'm going to assume that the way this is supposed to happen is that since I'm not having children, then it'll be through Hagar. But the thing is, that's where impatience comes in. And on top of that, her taking things into her own hand. And we're going to see in a minute how that backfired. And the thing is, Yahweh never said that. So she was just going on and being like, well, I'm guessing that this is what this means, and not being patient and waiting for him to give instruction. Because when Yahweh says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He may not tell us how we're going to do it, how he's going to do it, but it is up to us to be patient and to listen for him to give us instruction, not to take things into our own hand. When we take things into our own hand, that is how we get things messed up, right? That's how we end up, you know, not getting exactly what we wanted. That's how we end up messing up a blessing, by taking things into our own hand, right? And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrite, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So Hagar was like, I'm pregnant. This is my baby, right? And she despised Sarai. And Sarai was probably, hating too, like, you're pregnant. She probably felt some type of way about it. But the thing is, this was Sarai's plan the whole time. So she can't get mad that this woman who she told her husband to sleep with is now pregnant. She can't get mad at that. It was her idea. And Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. She tried to blame him, right? She tried to blame him for getting Hagar pregnant. But ma'am, it was your idea. You were the one who were impatient. You were the one who wanted to interpret what Yahuwah said, even though that's not what he said. And this is what happens a lot of time when it comes to the word, that people want to take their own interpretation and make it mean what they want it to mean, to fit whatever it is, whatever narrative they have. But you can't do that when it comes to Yahweh's word. He says what he says. That's it. Period. Right? You either take it or leave it. That's it. She says, I gave my female servant into your bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahweh judge between you and me. Well, first of all, let him just judge you, because since it was your idea and you wanted to be impatient and, try to get a jump on the prophecy and do things your way, now we're here. Now look at you, right? And Abram said to Sarai, see, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes. And Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. Right? So Hagar has now left. Right? And we're not going to talk too much about Hagar because this is supposed to be about Sarai. And so she has her maidservant sleep with her husband. The maidservant conceives. The maidservant is now like, this is my baby. And Sarai was like, she's going to keep her baby. I'm not going to get to have the baby. So the prophecy is obviously not going to come through her. And now I still have no child. This is how we end up putting our foot in our mouth, right? By jumping the gun, being impatient, doing things how we want to do or how we think it should be done. If that was Yahuwah's plan, that the seed was going to come, or the nations were going to come through Hagar for Sarai, he would have said that, right? He would have orchestrated that plan, but Sarai orchestrated that plan, and now she's mad because of it. But I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? That was your plan. You did that. You're just going to have to deal with it. So, flipping over into chapter 17, where it says, chapter 17, verse 15, and Elohim said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name. And I shall bless her and also give you a son by her. And I shall bless her, and she shall become nations. Sovereigns of peoples are to be from her. Right? And so Abraham falls on his face and laughed and said in his heart, is a child born to a man who is 100 years old, or is Sarah, who is 90 years old, to bear a child? Right? So he's like, we're old, you know. Imagine being 90 years old and Yahuwah telling you that you are going to give birth to a child. 90 years old, right? 1 foot in the grave. You're going to give birth to a child. Can you imagine? I cannot. I cannot. I cannot imagine that at all. So going over to chapter 18, starting at verse 9. And they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? So this is when the three men had came. There were no two men, 2 or 3 men who had came, and they were talking to Abram and telling him, all the things that's going to happen, for asking for Sarah. And he said, see, she's in a tent, because he had told her to go make ready 3 measures of flour and knead it and make some cakes for the guests, right? And he said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life. And see, Sarah your wife is to have a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah was past the way of women. So basically, she was past the age of when women normally gave birth or had children. So they're old, and they put emphasis on this, like they are extremely old. Okay, very old. I can't imagine anyone who is like a man who was 100, or a woman who was like in her 90s having a child today. Even though there are women who are getting older, like in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, who are giving birth and having children, but like 90 pushing 100, Child. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old too? Right? So, in my mind, I'm taking that to mean that they were not sleeping with each other, right? She was, because she says, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, which is, doing the do with a married couple, and my master being old too. So I'm not sure, in today's day and age, there's a certain age that people just genuinely, couples especially, just stop, having intimate time with each other for whatever reason. It could be due to erectile dysfunction. It could be due to, some side effects of menopause. It could be a whole cohort of things. So she's saying, at my age, should I, have intimate time with my husband and birth a child? First of all, she's like, I'm old. She not even have a child, but I'm old, and we're supposed to do what now? Why wait till I'm old? You waited until I'm old, right? Old, like old, old. You waited until I'm old, and now I'm supposed to be doing the deal. And what? And she laughed and she mocked Joa. And I'm just like, girl, even though she didn't say it out loud, she mocked him. And she's like, no, absolutely not. Like, really? And Yahweh said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I truly have a child, since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Yahweh? At the appointed time, I am going to return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. So, time of life, I'm assuming that means that um, the period in which a woman is pregnant. So, 9 months, right? But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. He's like, No, you did. You did. Even though you didn't do it out loud, I heard you within yourself. You laughed and you mocked. And this is what you said. So uh, I found that just relatable, for one, because, there's things that Yahweh will say, and it's just like, how is that really going to happen? Like, you'll get in a situation, it's just like, that can't happen the way that you say it's going to happen. Like that, there's just no way, right? It's impossible. And like, that's what she was saying. It's impossible for that to happen. Like, I'm old, and you really expect me in my old age to sleep with my husband, and not only sleep with him but also get pregnant and have a child? Like, that doesn't even make sense. In her mind, it doesn't make sense, right? And I'm like, girl, like, come on now. Come on now. All right, so let's flip over to chapter 21, starting at verse 1. And Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahweh did for Sarah as he had spoken. Like, he did what he said he was going to do. So Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the appointed time of which Elohim had spoken to him. So it happened when he said, This is when it's going to happen, right? And it's very rare in the word that Yahweh actually gives a specific time to when something's going to happen. He oftentimes just says, This is what's going to happen, but he doesn't exactly say when, right? But there are some times when he does give a specific time. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Yitzchak, or Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Yitzchak when he was 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him, which is part of the law. Now, the law has not yet been given yet to Moses to give to Yashua, right? But these laws were already in place, right? Some of the laws had already been given prior to, like the law of animal sacrifice, or like altar and offerings, since, you know, uh, Cain and Abel. That's always been around. Like, those laws, they didn't just come about in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those laws have always been there. They've always followed those laws. But now that Yah has his chosen people, he was like, okay, boom, now that we're here, here's all the laws that I'm giving you all before y'all go into this land, right? But continuing on. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Yitzchak was born to him. And Sarah said, Elohim has made me laugh, and everyone who hears of it laughs with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. So she's saying that Elohim made her laugh, and everyone who hears of her story laughs with her, right? Now, granted, I don't think when I laugh, I'm not laughing with her. I think I'm more so laughing at her because, girl, you tripping. Like, no, I'm not laughing with you. I'm laughing at you because, really, right? And the thing is, it's still relatable though. Like I've been in situations where I'm just like, there's just no possible way that this is going to happen like this. There's no possible way that I'm going to get out of this situation. There's no possible way that this thing is going to happen. And then it does. And it's like, wow, I should not have laughed because Yahweh does what he's going to do, right? He always does what he's going to do. He does what he says that he's going to do, right? And it's, yeah, that's just, what it is. We have to trust him. Like when he says he's going to do something, no matter how absurd it may seem to us, no matter how impossible it may seem to us, just have faith and trust him that it's going to work out the way that he said it's going to work out. Don't try to, take matters into your own hand and have it backfire. Don't do that, right? And so, and the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Yishak was weaned. So he created a feast, right? So he's now no longer nursing. And I'm not sure how long they nursed children or how long children should be nursed for. I nursed my son for 2.5 years. So I don't know if it's like around the age of 3 or however old it was, because it makes me think about like Moses um, when he was weaned from his mother and she had to give him to Pharaoh's daughter for her to raise him. I don't know what that age is, right? And so Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Mitzrayite, whom she had borne to Abram, mocking, right? So Ishmael was mocking Yitzhak. So they're brothers. We know how siblings are, especially brothers. You know how they get, So that mocking he could have been teasing him. He could have been saying all kinds of things. We don't know what that mocking looks like, but you can imagine their children. Now, granted, Ishmael is a lot older than Yitzhak, so I don't know what that will look like. So she said to Abraham, drive out this female servant and her son, for the son of this female servant shall not inherit with my son, with Yitzhak. And the matter was very evil in the eyes of Abraham because of his son, right? Abraham was like, no, like this is also my son. I don't want to leave him, you know. I don't want to, you know, send him away. Like he's my son. But Yo was like, I got him. Just do what your wife said. I got him. Don't worry about it. Right? So going on over to chapter 23. And Sarah lived 127 years, the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Right? And that is, all the years of Sarah. So um, they together only had the one child, right? They only had Isaac. He was an only child from his dad and his mother together, but he did have a brother from his dad, so a half brother. But the thing that we can learn from Sarah is again, like I said, have faith, have trust. Whatever Yahuwah says is going to happen is going to happen. No matter how, in your mind, it may seem like, no, there's absolutely no way. All things are possible through Yahuwah. All things are possible. No matter how outlandish it may seem, not saying that, you're going to have a child at 90. Like, no. But what I'm saying is there are things that he's going to put into place that you're going to be like, there's just absolutely no way. Like, no possible way that I can do that. Well, no, you cannot do it alone. But with Yahuwah, yes, you can.